think I can read. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see you both on Zoom and in person. Now, how about it for being in person, you guys? Yes. I'm so excited and so grateful to see all of you. We have a few announcements before I get started with some other announcements. I'm Juliette Berger. I'm president of Washtenaw Audubon. We have a couple housekeeping business. We'd like you to save your questions till the end of the presentation. And unfortunately, we don't have snacks or beverages because we'll be keeping our masks on for the whole time we're together, and then we'll all be safe. David Amamoto will be selling t-shirts. He's in the back of the room now, but there's t-shirts over on the table on my right. And David Dister, our presenter tonight, has his wonderful book for sale, which is Birds of Mason County and Ludington State Park. I own the book and it's terrific. He has also a free checklist for Mason County, as well as books and information about flora and fauna of Costa Rica, which is what his presentation will be about this evening. So it's important to us at Washtenaw Audubon that we welcome everyone, not just folks who look like me, folks who look like the wide spectrum of the beautiful people that we have in our region and throughout the country and indeed throughout the world. The birds that Washtenaw Audubon pledges to protect differ in color, size, behavior, and geographical preference in countless other ways. And as we honor and celebrate the equally remarkable diversity of the human species, Washtenaw Audubon considers the work of inclusion, diversity, and equity a top priority moving forward. And we hope that in doing so, we can bring new creativity and energy to our work in Washtenaw County and beyond for birds and people alike. Respect, inclusion, and opportunity for people of all backgrounds, lifestyles, and perspectives will attract the best ideas and harness the greatest passion to shape a healthier, more vibrant future for all of us who share our planet. We believe that protecting and conserving nature and the environment transcends political, cultural, and social boundaries. As an organization, we are committed to increasing the diversity of our board, volunteers, members, and supporters. And as an organization, Washtenaw Audubon strives to create a sense of community where all people can feel safe to explore nature and experience the wonder of birds. Yay, birds. We respect the individuality of each member of our community and welcome all without discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, age, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, disability, national or ethnic origin, politics, veteran status, or any other status. All are welcome to bird with us, learn with us, and to share our passion for birds and the environment. So welcome to everyone here at Matthaei Botanical Gardens and on Zoom. Do we have any new members in the audience or on Zoom with us? I guess we'll be finding out about the Zoom after our program. Any new audience members who are members of Washtenaw Audubon? Oh, welcome.
My husband,
yeah.
Jim Windack.
Nice to meet you, Jim, and welcome Dawn. Well, everybody is welcome at our programs. You don't have to be a member, but if you are interested in membership and you're not a member of Washtenaw Audubon, it's very easy to sign up on our website, washtenawaudubon.org. Is Diana here? I don't see her. Nope. Okay, we have a new membership chair, but we'll introduce her the next time. Cool bird sightings is our next order of business. Does anyone have a cool bird sighting in the audience?
And you may want to refer to the room to the folks on
I will. I can tell you that there are short-eared owls at the corner of Reland and Gottfredson. If you're interested in seeing those short-eared owls, show up just before dusk, look east toward a big tall stand of Phragmites, and that's where the short-eared owls seem to emerge from. Yes, Dawn?
I did not have a sighting, but I found a bird that I'd never found before, because the Carolina Wren has a very famous call that comes in the spring, all through the summer and even into the fall. But I heard incessantly another call, kind of like a vibrating. And with my Merlin app, and it said Carolina Wren.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw another one and another one. So they were in 3 different places in Hudson Mills Park.
Nice. Thank you. Dawn was just saying that she's had some Carolina Wren sightings and she learned a new call that she now recognizes as a Carolina Wren. So that's cool. Back in the 1950s, there were just 1 or 2 Carolina Wrens here in our county. The 1956 Christmas bird count had 1 Carolina Wren on it. So we're pretty excited that we have, for example, through my breeding bird survey program with the city, with NAP, we had over 356 Carolina Wren sightings during the breeding season. So pretty cool bird. Andrew?
I did not see this yet, but Sean Blockman reported a lesser blackback gull this afternoon at Whitmore Lake.
That's right. There was a lesser black-backed gull reported from Whitmore Lake this afternoon. So that if you're interested in that bird, that's a good place to go look for birds this time of year, especially waterfowl. Susan, you have a bird?
Nothing unusual, but goldfinches.
Oh yeah, tons and tons of goldfinches at Susan and Michael Kelb's house.
Yeah, enough, no?
And also lots of finches up in the Upper Peninsula. White-winged and red crossbills are up there, the red poles, pine grosbeaks and pine siskins. Hopefully we'll get some of those down here. Oh, my husband Scott and I were at Saginaw Forest yesterday, and there were a boatload of red-breasted nuthatches there. So expect those and keep your feeders full. Yeah, we have the Christmas bird count coming up on December 18th. So keep your feeders full, and if you're within the count circle, you can volunteer as a feeder watcher, or you can volunteer as a field observer. And please check the website, washtenawaudubon.org, and you will be able to sign up for the area that you prefer. We divide our Christmas bird count area into 8 different separate areas, and each has its own area leader. So that's a really fun community event that we have been doing for over 75 years in this region, and nationally over 120, 130 years. Other cool bird sightings. There's a good mix of ducks at Watkins Lake State Park. And now I'll tell you about our upcoming field trips. This Saturday, we're meeting at Belle Isle at the Nature Center at 8 a.m. And this is a joint field trip with Oakland Audubon. On December 4th, we're having a family-friendly duck walk at Ford Lake. The details are on Facebook and our website. That's in conjunction with the Ypsilanti District Library. And on Sunday, December 5th, Matt Spoor will be leading a field trip at the ARB, meeting at the regular location on Riverview Court. And we have a tentative gull trip that we haven't got the details lined up yet. That will be, if it happens, on December 11th. That's a morning trip, and we usually rent vans for that and pack in together. So that will be a vaccination mandatory field trip for when we're in the vans together. It's pouring rain here, so we have a little extra sound. Again, I mentioned the Christmas bird count on December 18th. Check the website for lots of details on that. And on January 1st, this one's not published yet, Matt Spohr and I will be leading a field trip at Gallup Park to start out your new year with some good birds. Do we have any other announcements from the audience here? Anything else you want me to say or announce to the group? Okay, with that said, I'm going to bring Mike Sefton up to the microphone and he can talk about our upcoming programs and he will be introducing our speaker for tonight's program.
Thank you, Juliet. In January, we'll have Matt Hack doing a program on his field work for his undergrad degree on common and leased terns in Chesapeake Bay. February, Andy Johnson, this will probably be Zoom only, a newly discovered Whimbrel migration stopover spot in South Carolina. Andy's at Cornell and is a video producer there, and he'll have some fabulous footage and probably as well as still photos. In March, Keith Dickey will give a program on the birds of the Southwest. Tonight, we are pleased to have Dave Dister as our speaker on the birds of Costa Rica. Dave attended Miami University in Ohio, where he received a BA in botany in 1975. He then earned a secondary education teaching certificate in biology and earth science at the University of Cincinnati. His career has included positions as assistant director of the Roger Tory Peterson Nature Center in Jamestown, New York, editorial assistant for Birders World magazine in Holland, Michigan, and 17 years as environmental scientist with a national consulting firm in Dayton. Dave's been birding for more than 50 years and has conducted numerous bird surveys and censuses in the Great Lakes region, including breeding bird atlases in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, and New York. He's a former member of the Ohio Bird Records Committee. Dave moved to Ludington in 2008 and was the seasonal botanist for the Manistee District of the Manistee National Forest through 2014. He's a compiler for the Ludington Christmas bird count and the Mason County migration count. In 2020, Dave self-published The Birds of Mason County, Michigan, copies of which are for sale on the table at the back of the room. Please welcome Dave Dister.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Juliet. And thank you, Jessica. It's great to be here with Washington Audubon. I love this trip so much. I enjoy showing it to people. I've only taken one overseas trip before, and it was an archaeology-based trip with some buddies. And it was kind of embarrassing. 11 days in Guatemala, I added like 12 live birds. Pretty pitiful. I added 177 with this trip. There were 5 of us. So we had a small, tight group with a local expert, and it was very reasonable. Johan Fernandez was the leader. So originally my program was 300 slides, and I found out if I want to do it in less than 2 hours, I need to cut that in half. So we'll try to go through these fairly rapidly. I do have the names of birds up on the photos, so that should definitely help, because even to this day, I don't remember absolutely all of them. So this just gives you a general idea of Costa Rica, and The areas with lines indicate, number one, at the very right side, Hotel Rabeldow is the place that all of us, spent our first night after flying in pretty much in the afternoon for most of the folks. And then our last day was at that same hotel. All the other locations were 2 nights apiece, which gives you 10 full days of birding. A lot of interesting facts about Costa Rica. For a country that's 88% the size of Lake Michigan, it has 930 species of birds, 8 of which are endemics, found nowhere else on the planet. About 25% of Costa Rica is set aside as national parks and refuges. Of course, the topography is tremendous, and it's surrounded on either side by 2 different oceans. So no wonder it's a fantastic place to be for birding and for those that don't speak Spanish all that well. I did this really quick list, the most numerous bird species by family. Tyrant flycatchers, wow, 80 species. That's pretty impressive. Hummingbirds, that's still impressive with 49 species, and you can go down the list there. And then throughout the program, when there's a new category of bird, oftentimes up in the corner, the upper corner of the slide, it'll mention how many species there are from that group, especially those that are not on this table. This gives you a general idea of the different locations of the ecozones, with the dark blue being the highest. They call it highlands. Basically, these are mountainous areas. So here's part of the hotel complex. We were not in a 2-story facility. We were in a different place, and we didn't spend any time swimming. We were looking at birds. So guess what? One of the first birds we saw was one I saw in Texas under a different name, clay-colored thrush. I learned this was a clay-colored robin. Well, you know, taxonomists, they love to change names. Change the scientific name all you want, but the common name, give us a break, please. Huffman's woodpecker, obviously that was a new bird, 16 woodpecker species. And this is just a submap to give an idea. If you look at the dark violet area right here, that represents this area here. So we're going to be starting off going clockwise on our trip. Well, the next morning, before we even leave, it turns out there are a lot of good birds around this hotel. And apparently that's why our leader chose this. Ferruginous pygmy owl, pretty cool to have that first thing in the morning. This nape wren. Squirrel cuckoo. It was kind of elusive trying to get a good photo. 10 species of cuckoos and allies down there. And we had a fantastic van. Couldn't have asked for any better conditions. The weather was great, very little rain on the whole trip. And it was only warm on the Pacific side where it got to 90. So one of our first aerial raptors was a Swainson's hawk. And we're now in the Caribbean lowlands. And every now and then we had some really cool scenery. Obviously, there's not too many trails that go up and around a lot of these waterfalls. So it was basically a scenic shot. But our leader really knew a lot of great places to stop that you wouldn't imagine would have birds. And these might be just small little parks, but a lot of these little parks had feeders, and especially with hummingbirds. Or there are quite a few restaurants that cater to tourists that love birds. So boy, I don't know, every other little dive on these back roads seem to have a lot of cool feeders and birds. By the way, hummingbirds are not often called hummingbirds per se. So you have a violet saberwing. They have some pretty colorful names. Silver-throated tanager, excellent name for that particular bird. Now there's no number given for the barbettes because there are only 2 species, and I have photos of both. The prong-billed barbet, males and females look the same. However, with the red-headed barbet, the males have the red head, the females are mostly all green. And wow, tanager that's blue, pretty stunning. A lot of different orioles. This is the black-cowled oriole. And this is a general shot of the rest of the group in front of me. We'll have a view of the rest of the group a little bit later. We did see a few trees in bloom, but again, since this was the dry season, there very little rain and not as much in bloom typically. This might have been the only falcon we actually saw. Oh, one of 2 falcons actually. We'll see another one later. Laughing falcon. It has various calls, but apparently one of the calls must be pretty interesting. This bird didn't look interested in the photographer, though. I don't know who Passerini was, but he has some pretty cool tanagers here. And you might notice a lot of the food that these people put out are bananas and other tropical fruits. One of the best birds of the whole trip. Wow. And a cool name, Northern Emerald Toucanet. It's probably the smallest of the toucans. There are only 6 species in the country. And if you can barely pick out the chin area and the base of the bill are a violet color. So, wow, what a spectacular bird. Then we have some things that are not birds on occasion. We didn't ignore unusual animals. So I had heard howler monkeys in Guatemala. You can hear them more than a mile away, dawn and dusk. This one wasn't howling. It looked pretty depressed. I don't know. Poor thing, I guess it just was waiting for the nighttime. Montezuma ora penula. The bird is just as long as its name. Wow, it's a long bird in the blackbird family. Very attractive. So our first overnight was at Era Ambigua Lodge. Era Ambigua is Latin for great green macaw, which we saw later. I had seen Jacana in Guatemala, but it's always nice to see another one at a lot closer range. And the motmots, funny name, but stunning birds. And all 3 species that we saw were all in pastel colors. It's just stunning. But the way to tell some of them apart from color is the tail, because some of them, there'll be tail feather shafts with no barbs on them. And it looks really strange. This might be the only rail we saw. A pretty good sized bird, far bigger than our Virginia rail or even king rail, a gray-necked wood rail. Golden hooded tanager. And this just shows what our rooms were going down. I was on the left side, the second door down. Now we're at La Selva, which is a famous biological station. And here I am pulling up the rear, have my little raincoat just in case. There are 9 Tatiras and allies. This is the only one we saw, the masked. Now this is interesting. We have a category called puffbirds, but you might think, that looks familiar. It's not a kingfisher, but it turns out kingfishers and puffbirds are right next to each other taxonomically. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Oh, I've seen collared peccary in Arizona, maybe Texas. You just don't want to get too close. So with a zoom lens, you can get a good photo without scaring them or threatening them. And being a botanist officially, I had to get a photo someone took of me here at a huge buttress tree. Then we have another category. They're not typical game birds, but again, the guans, chachalakas, and curassows are right next to game birds taxonomically. Really colorful chestnut-colored woodpecker going after the fruits. And I'm guessing the peccary was probably eating those same fruits on the ground. Aha, look at the gap in the tail there. Broad-billed motmot. The color is subtly different, but boy, the tail is quite different. Just a general shot of the jungle. A little better shot. Johan is in the dark shirt. He has a tripod and scope as well as Rob in the background there. So we had 2 people with scopes out of 6 of us, the leader and 5 of us. This particular La Selva is doing research on bats. So you can't tell from the photo they have long noses, but they're called long-nosed bats. The pattern on the back should suggest, I don't know, fiddle bat, something other than long-nosed. Very appropriately named rufous-tailed hummingbird. And we were fortunate to see some owls. And the case here with 2 spectacled owls, the bird on the right is an adult, the bird on the left, a juvenile. We saw several different types of trogans. And I never thought there would be a white colored bat, but these are full-grown Honduran white bats. They're underneath a leaf that one of the people at the reserve had to actually hold up so I could get a photo from below. Or the very famous one of, there's quite a few different poison arrow frogs, and this is a strawberry poison frog, but the lodge had a totally different name for it because they didn't want people knowing there were poison frogs around, because you can imagine there's some people who would probably stomp on them. Other people would try to take them out of the country to the black market in North America, or who knows, whatever. So they called them blue jean frogs. So I thought, yeah, that's very smart. It's good to be ignorant in this case. And although I'd never seen a sloth before, it's like, wow, this was the mammal of the trip. They're so iconic, charismatic. This is the 3-toed sloth. And I had a lot of other photos, but to limit it, the next photo shows it was a female with a little rag doll on top. So that was a highlight for mammals for sure. One of the few times we had rain. Red-legged honeycreeper didn't seem to mind the rain much. Here we are. The red star in the middle shows where we're going to be staying in the next 2 nights. Lineated woodpecker was quite a large woodpecker. If you know anything about woodpeckers in the world, officially, ivory-billed woodpecker has been declared extinct by Fish and Wildlife, and the imperial woodpecker is either close to extinction or extinct. So basically, the lineated would be probably one of the few largest woodpeckers left on the planet, sadly. Some big lizards here. Green iguana was quite high up. I'm guessing the body alone was 3 feet and the tail was probably another 3 feet long. And if you're a shorebird fanatic, whoa, lapwings are really cool looking. This is a southern lapwing. There's also a northern lapwing. When I looked in my shorebird book, oh wow, there's like 30 species of lapwing around the world. You're all familiar with raccoons? Well, this is the affected similar critter, which is after anything people drop, whether it's leftover lunch or whatever. Bromeliads, which are in the pineapple family, quite common. And then the blue flower, pale blue in the background is an orchid of some type. Roadside hawk doesn't sound so exciting, but that's the official name for this particular bird, which is an immature. We have another Trogan called a Gartered Trogan. Golden olive woodpecker, pretty unusual color, at least when you compare it to woodpeckers that we're familiar with. There's a good use for leftover taco chips, I guess. If you want a parrot or a parakeet, they'll go crazy over things at feeders such as this. The orange-chinned parakeet. Then you have critters like emerald basilisk, really charismatic. I'm sure I saw this in some old black and white dinosaur movies in the 50s. It'd be great for a monster. We did have an overcast day at this point, so it's really hard to tell. There is a greenish sheen, but there's also some maroon colors on a bird that's referred to as the green ibis. And now a great diversity of kingfishers we saw on the trip, this being a green kingfisher. And a familiar bird, a yellow-crowned night heron. And no, this is not a razor fence dove, but it was safe from predators, I figured, since I didn't see any hawks going after it. Ruddy ground dove looked pretty happy to be where he was. We were going through a high security or quote risky part of the town on our way somewhere else. Another fairly large woodpecker, although it's hard to tell being hidden here, the pale-billed woodpecker. We're now going up in elevation. We're in the middle elevations. And now here's a photo of Airnell Lodge. It's a nice cobblestone walkway. The good reason I got this photo, this particular rufous collared sparrow was attacking its own reflection in the car mirror. So I thought, well, I might as well get a photo of what it's doing. So now this is the back view from my deck where I was staying at the hotel. Most of the places you stay, at least if you're with a birding group, you have gardens all around you. So it makes great photography for not only birds, but butterflies as well. You have banana species, and there's numerous banana species. Turns out the ones that we have in North America are mostly the Cavendish banana, but occasionally you see others in the markets. Another bird, I missed a gecko on my Guatemala trip, so this photo obviously was taken so you can see the suction cups on the toes. Pretty cool looking animal. You might be familiar with the term eucalyptus, but this is a bark of a particular eucalyptus tree called rainbow bark. Eucalyptus is not native to Central America, but it's planted. And unfortunately, if you have some coffee plantations, they may actually use non-native eucalyptus to the detriment of a lot of breeding birds. Another view of the observatory. Eye level view of a yellow-throated toucan about 80 feet away. Stunning bird. Scaly-breasted hummingbird. He's telling us to, let's see, that'd be turn left at the next place to see your next bird. Hiking at Airnell. There are signs. Most of the signs are in English and/or Spanish. And there are loads of ferns. Well, the little plant guide I got only had half a dozen ferns. There must be 400 or 4,000. But it looked like it had rivets, so I'm calling it the rivet fern. Euphonias, 12 different species of euphonias and siskins, although it's like, doesn't look like it's related to siskins, but perhaps it is. Arenal volcano, 5,357 feet, one of the higher volcanoes in the country. It was active, I believe, from 1975 and ended its activity in 2010. But it'll probably come out of a sleep in the next couple of decades based on its history. Interesting here, we have a swinging, kind of a swinging or undulating bridge. 5 people at a time are allowed. So it looked like it could support more, but I guess they're just being cautious. White-tipped dove, no doubt, is describing the tip of the tail. Really attractive, great curassow. And that bird is probably 3 feet from bill to tail. It's a good sized bird. Watermelons also are used to attract various birds. We have a brown jay. You can see that along the southern Rio Grande River in Texas. Here's a hummingbird called a thorntail. It's green, so it's a green thorntail. My best guess, it's on kind of verbena, although I can't be 100% positive. Tropical kingbird, they are reported in the extreme southern part of the United States. For sure, people can see great kiskadees almost anytime you go to the Rio Grande Valley. So it's nice to see them down here too. Okay, now day 6 and 7, we're in the backwaters of the Pacific Ocean. All right, let's get some shorebirds and other cool stuff. Well, on our way, there was a ring kingfisher on a telephone wire. Lake Arenal is probably the largest lake in the country. Here we're at a lunch stop with Heckle and Jekyll, I guess. The blue and yellow macaw is not native. The scarlet macaw is native, but in this circumstance, I think they're both pets. The caracaras are just charismatic birds. In fact, the crested caracara is the national bird of Mexico. And now we're in the northern Pacific lowlands area. And we now have arrived at Ensenada Lodge, which happens to be an active cattle ranch, but it's also a great birding location. And here's our first frigate bird, magnificent male. And a Wembrel, yay, one of my favorite. Brown pelicans, of course. Pacific screech owl. People tell me it's been by the, maybe almost the same tree next to the dining area for the last 10 or 15 years. It's like, I'm sure it did look alive. It didn't look stuffed. White-winged dove, boy, it's expanding quite fast in the United States now. And boy, I'd heard the term thick knee browsing through shorebird books around the world. Guess what? The photographer has the angle that obscures the legs. Like, oh man, was the knee really thick? I don't know. Black-headed trogans. The lower bird is a male bird, upper is a female. And how can you not like black-necked stilt? All the stilts are pretty neat. Orange-fronted parakeet. Terns are always fascinating. These are royals on a dock by our, where we're staying overnight. And I had seen a few surf birds off the Washington coast years ago. Never got great photos of them, especially in flight like this, or on a nice little spit. So you have a whimbrel there in the middle, surf birds below it. You have winter plumaged black-bellied plovers on either side, and then peeps lower. And I'm not going to try to figure out what the peeps were. This gives you a good idea of the low tide at the Gulf of Nicoya. And this white-throated magpie jay, what a stunning bird. That had to be a vertical shot, obviously. But I think it was waiting for somebody to turn their head to steal a biscuit in the lunch or breakfast area there. Inca Doves, some of us are familiar with here. Nice little area, some wading birds. The small white birds, relatively small, are snowy egrets. The larger ones are great egrets. Then there's, in the center, it looks like we're looking at the back of a great blue heron and maybe a side view of a tricolored heron, and then some stilts again. Oh, an iconic bird, the boat-billed heron. Wow. It must be able to crack open mussel shells and clams that are really hefty. Another type of oriole, spot-breasted. White-fronted parakeet. You can see here the white forehead is a very distinctive mark. Every day we go birding before breakfast, which is probably a good idea because a lot of birds are very active in the early morning. When I look at the gap on that motmot's tail, wow. You almost don't have to look at the rest of the bird to identify at least of these three just on the tail. Turquoise browed motmot. Here's our dining area. Very nice. Your scissor-tail flycatcher. Rufous-naped wren with a nice little flower above it there. And a bird I'd heard a lot about, Mangrove Warbler. It's actually probably the most extreme of all the subspecies of yellow warbler. In fact, someday it may, well, I guess, yeah, I think it's technically now a separate species. I'm not sure. If not, it may be at some point. It just looks so different. Not the best angle, but this bat falcon was way, way up on a girder of a tower. So it was interesting, at least through a spotting scope, it looked a lot better. Now we're in the Pacific lowlands, South Pacific lowlands. Crocodile here, and the Tarcoles River is a place that we took a trip. We're going to be seeing some really cool photos coming up here. I got a little fancy here. I got a photo of a wood stork on top of a photo of the stream going upstream. So we're going to be farther upstream later on here. Fiery-billed Araceli, another in the toucan group. A gray hawk, low enough it's a very easy ID. And here we finally have a wild scarlet macaw, but they're not all that common in the wild. It's a white whiskered puff bird. And this shows on the very left side of the map, that red star shows where we're going to be heading for our next 2 nights. We're going to be going to Caracara National Park. Another monkey, white-faced capuchin monkeys. Reminds me of Night at the Museum. Okay, here's a male white-whiskered puff bird. The great Tenamu probably is related to other gallinaceous birds, just by the look. Here we have another dining facility. Black and white owl. This bird, unlike the others we saw, didn't seem to want to wake up, or just trying to ignore us maybe. Okay, everybody was drooling for this boat trip. You notice the name on the one boat says Crocodile Safari. We didn't care about crocodiles. We were here for birds. All right, almost eye level photo of an osprey. Very attractive, bare-throated tiger heron. That's a mouthful. Of course, you're going to see black vultures. Probably a good place to see dead fish as well as dead tires. I got some great shots of a common black hawk, one drinking water, and I wish I'd left it in. Oh well. Neotropic cormorants, obviously more typical down there. Here we have a different kind of caracara, the yellow-headed caracara. Uh-oh, I'm duplicating another yellow-crowned night hare. Well, it looks in a different pose, so that's fine. Amazon kingfisher. American pygmy kingfisher. Must be one of the smallest in the world. I think it's only like 5 inches long. Here's a crab-eating raccoon that must have had one too many crabs. Doesn't look too enthusiastic. Okay, our last 2 days, we're up in the mountains. But before we get to the mountains, coastal area, what do we find? A wandering tattler. Yay, cool bird. This is at Quepos. And as we go up in the higher elevations or middle elevations, the only king vulture we saw on the whole trip. The odd thing is, you would think, oh, it's called king vulture because it's the biggest. Well, my gosh, the wings are only 4 to 5 feet in width, wingspan. Turkey vulture's like 6. So, but on the other hand, those wings are very wide. So, well, now the head is very ornately colored, so we can't tell here, but that was cool. That bird must have been almost a mile up. So with a telephoto lens of 400, the same as binoculars, I still had to zoom and cut and trim. This was a cool bird, turquoise Katinga, and I was the one that found it, and that's good because I had an accident for lunch one time. I spilled my water, messed up the whole table, and so I was in the doghouse till I found this. But they said, our leader, Joe Lohan, said, well, there's been a turquoise Katinga, seen in this general area, and we're next to a school and a kind of residential area. It's like, well, how can a bird of that color be hard to see? And I just, my binocs zoomed in on it. Snowy-bellied hummingbird, cool name. White-throated mountain jim. No hint of hummingbird in the name, but mountain jim's a cool name. And here's our whole group. I'm on the left. Rob and Valerie from New York City. They often bird together. They're both musicians. And then Johan's in the center. Then 2 folks from Texas together, Grady and Joe. So it's like, boy, we're almost all the same height. That doesn't often happen. But you can see this high altitude with clouds in the background. The best bird at the end of the day was Volcano Junco at that elevation. That was a good way to top off the day. And we're starting off at our next hotel. First thing in the morning, sunrise before breakfast. We came all this way for a black guan. No, we came for a resplendent quetzal. Yay, the bird everybody was waiting to see. It was like 200 feet away. there were like 6 or 7 groups. Each group had 5 to 10 people, and we were limited to be right on the road. We couldn't get any closer, which is what you want. You don't want to disturb a bird that's an iconic bird and not all that frequent. So, by the way, that tail is not anywhere as long as it can be. So I think it's because we were there during the non-breeding season, because a male could have a tail that's longer than the body. It could be 3 foot long just for the tail. A general sense of what the gardens are like again. You might as well look in the gardens when you have some free time. Here's a scintillant hummingbird, collared redstart, ruddy-capped nightingale thrush, purple-throated mountain gem with no purple throat because it's not the male. They should have named it after the female as the rusty-throated mountain gem. Black-faced solitaire, interesting thrush. You have to have a lizard without a tail here to show people it survived an attack from a hawk, probably. Very interesting bird, slaty flower piercer. It actually pokes a hole at the base of the floral tube to get to the nectar without having a long tongue like a hummingbird. So it competes with hummingbirds and moths by having that strange bill. Typical mountain stream. Flame-colored tanager, excellent name for that. Boy, this is strange. Yellow puff on the, what is that on the leg? Is that, if it's for courtship, you would think it'd be yellow skin on the bill or around the face, or it's like, pretty strange. Yellow-thighed finch. Large-footed finch. Who's going to compare feet? It's kind of strange, kind of colorful. Unusual flower, kind of looks pouch-like, so I guess they call it a pocket pouch flower. Looks like it might be related to our touch-me-nots, perhaps. This was a rare bird, black and yellow silky flycatcher. I redeemed myself a second time. I won't tell you why, but that's good. My best hummingbird photo by far. Gorgeous lesser violet ear. Golden browed Chloriphonia. The best bird, hummingbird, is by another photographer. Fiery throated hummingbird, and boy, look at the rainbow colors there. That's Valerie Gebert. And that's the synopsis of my trip. So I'd be happy to take questions. Yeah.
For what month you were there, and also can you repeat it?
The time of year I was there, January, I think it was 22nd to February 2nd. So it was like 12 days, but really it's like 11, more or less, close to full days of birding. And I didn't complain. We only saw maybe 3 mosquitoes on the whole trip. So, you know, I'm paranoid about pesticides anyway, so that was fine with me. And half the time I ignore them being a wetland biologist, but anyway, if you've been to the UP, you know mosquitoes. So any other, yes?
What was your favorite moment of the entire trip? Do you have a favorite moment?
Favorite moment? Well, I have to say this, probably the sloth. It's not a bird, but oh my gosh, it's like, how many mammals do you see with a smile on their face? You know, I mean, it's like, yeah, with a baby too. So yeah, that's so as far as what was my favorite animal? Well, it wasn't a bird necessarily, but favorite bird, boy, the quetzal was obviously among the top. So, and also partially has to do with the quality of my photo. So the emerald toucan, that obviously that has to rank as one of the top as well. And am I glad I have a professional camera that was 2 years old right before I took this trip. My old camera, it was for serious amateurs, and it didn't have a light sensitivity. It was my previous camera was only up to 300 zoom instead of 400, you know, and it had 10 frames, my new camera, 10 frames per second. So if you have a moving bird, at least one of the frames might be halfway in focus. And not only that, the wings might be frozen, so you actually see the texture of the wings. So it's like, you get what you pay for. You know, if you're going to invest in a camera and be a birder, it's great. Yeah.
Can you tell us what?
I have a Canon 7D Mark II, and it's IS, which means image stabilization. It has a really high range of ISO, which helps with light sensitivity. So if you have a dark bird that's up in a, you know, kind of a shadowy understory of a tree, you can make adjustments, raise the ISO, and even, you know, other things. Once you do a little practicing, it's like, wow, you can take a photo at sunset with the right ISO, and it looks like it's 2 hours earlier. And it doesn't look washed out, it just looks 2 hours earlier. So yeah, it's a great camera, highly recommended. And the lens was recommended as one of the 10 best for wildlife photography. Yes.
Just repeat that camera.
Canon 7D Mark II, and the 2 is Roman numeral 2. 1 to 400 millimeter, something like f4.5 to 5.6, if I recall. Not super expensive, but expensive enough. Yes.
Kind of a funny question. That was your van for the whole trip?
Yes.
Do you know who drove?
We had another, I guess you'd say, an employee of Jose, or not Jose, Johan. So yeah, there were.
Did you know his name?
Never got a photo of him, so I didn't.
It's a long shot.
Yeah, so I mean, he was really great driver, and you know, I don't think he spoke a lot of English, but it didn't matter. He was driving us, and he actually ate with us for all the meals. So it was nice to have him join our little group. Yes.
Two questions from the chat. One of the questions is, when people in the audience ask you a question, can you repeat it so they can hear it?
Thanks.
The other question is, what was the name of the tour group?
Okay, what was the name of the tour company? This was Johan Fernandez Incorporated.
Okay.
Actually, he has a website, and I think the website, I think it might be Birding Costa Rica. There's a lot of independent local guides that are all excellent. And in fact, in the back is the bird guide that I used. It was recommended by Johan. Just so happens Johan is mentioned in the acknowledgments, so no problem. But you know, at least the author of this book recognized that Johan was one of the good birders in the country. So, Johan Fernandez. Yes. Johan. Yes.
You mentioned that one of the shorebirds, and you showed a beautiful picture of the low tide at where was it?
Nicoya, Nicoya, I believe.
Can you repeat the question?
The question being, where was that photo of low tide? So that was taken at the Gulf of Nicoya, which is the northwest corner of the country on the Pacific Ocean, but this is a backwater gulf. And that happened to be right next to the Ensenada cattle ranch, which I didn't have photos of cattle here, but we had to avoid cattle when we were looking for birds. But it was a great place. So, you know, don't let the fact that it's a cattle ranch dissuade you. It's certainly worth going to a lot of these little back areas. And these local guides know back areas that are not nearly as famous. And that's fine, you know, if it saves you money, which this would have been a lot more expensive had it been with a, you know, a well-known group, sure. The others? Yes?
If you could have only gone to Costa Rica or Guatemala, what would be your choice?
Well, now it's a clear choice. If I had a choice of Guatemala or Costa Rica, I was fortunate when the four of us went to Guatemala. It was because two of the other guys had been to Central America so often. They knew Spanish far better than I did. But that was after the 30 Years' War had ended. And now it's all back, coming back. And it's just, I think our State Department is recommending people do not go to Guatemala. It's just not as safe. Plus, again, you can have a lot more English-speaking people to deal with people like myself who are not very good for speaking Spanish.
So is it safe? There
Mhm.
are birding.
Well, not as safe as it used to be, from what I understand. So I don't.
How many years ago?
Well, so my trip to Guatemala was 2003. I think the 30 Years' War ended like 2000. So, you know, in fact, it was a little risky there. When we first got there, we were driving around some of the, well, we were in the Guatemala City. We had a cab take us to some of these large, well-known buildings downtown squares and such. One place we went into, they asked for our passports. We don't want to give you our passport. Might not get it back. So that was kind of a tenuous situation at that time. So if it's any worse, I don't know. Plus the fact that in Guatemala, we did go on one of the famous chicken buses, and you know, you can have birders or just general travelers, people bringing pets with them, and probably doesn't have air conditioning. So Guatemala, although they had more paved roads in 2003 compared to previous years when my friends had been there, they'd made some progress, but it sounds like they're backsliding now politically, which is unfortunate.
My question to the chat, they asked if you could quickly repeat your answer, whether you preferred Costa Rica or Guatemala.
Whether I prefer Costa Rica or Guatemala, well, it's, again, I didn't see too many birds in Guatemala, and they don't speak as much English. So for a couple of reasons, I still favor Costa Rica for those reasons. Yes.
What is the name of that green frog on the front of that book? It's very popular.
Well, we can check the book in the back, because I got all three of these books on the back table. My guess is some kind of tree frog.
Is it the red eye?
It could be there could, yeah. It's like, it would make sense to call it the red-eyed tree frog, but sometimes biologists look for subtle things like red belly on a woodpecker or something crazy, you know?
Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you, Zoom folks.
I got a message from Ann Alvarez, that there's a,
Juliet, here's some.
oh yeah, okay.
I'll pick this up.
Oh, thanks.
A message from Ann Alvarez that there's a U of M tour going to Costa Rica in the new year. You have to be an alumni, but it's not too expensive to join the Alumni Association if you wish. I think it's in January or February, and Tony Alvarez, who's a Washtenaw Audubon member, Ann's husband, is going to be one of the leaders should this tour actually take place, which we hope it will. So if you're interested in that, check out the U of M Alumni Association website, and you should be able to get details about this tour coming up in 2022. Thanks to Dave Dister. I really, really enjoyed this program. It was so wonderful. Very entertaining. Oh, and remember his book of the birds of Mason County and Ludington State Park is for sale in the back, and also t-shirts. And if you all could help us put the chairs away, that would be fabulous. Have a good evening.
How are we?